Hi, my name is Jamila Latif, and I'm a past member of the debate club of St. Bridget's Convent, and I'll be debriefing the motion. This house would send their child with moderate autism to a disabled school. The info slide essentially describes and defines what a disabled school is and what moderate autism essentially means, right? I'll be first going through setup and then bringing out my arguments for both proposition and opposition, and then bringing out my last clash points, which will essentially which I will hinge the entire debate on. So moving on to setup, understand that during the duration of the life of a child, one of the most important decisions a parent does make is the child's education, right? You're essentially choosing what kind of background you want your child to be in while they go through the key development stages of their life, right? So essentially, in our case, it would be what are you sending your child to a private or public school? Are you sending your child to a school that follows a particular religion or a secular school? And decisions like that, right? Now, understand that in this scenario, you're talking about a child with moderate autism, which means that this decision now has a different angle and a different viewpoint that you need to now consider, because the child is essentially differently abled. They're going to have certain differences from the average child in society. Yeah. And essentially, these differences need to be taken into consideration, because if they are not brought up in a certain way that caters to their needs and that addresses what problems that they do have, this child could either become a hindrance to society or a hindrance to themselves or to their parents. And that can essentially bring out, that is essentially what this debate is based on, right? Now to talk about the child's viewpoint and what this child essentially looks like, right? A mildly autistic child. You're talking about a child who, on at first glance, looks like any other normal child, and you cannot tell them apart. But after spending a certain amount of time with them, and analyzing and understanding them a bit more, you notice that there are differences within this child, right? They either take longer time to understand things, or they may even understand things at a greater speed than anyone else in the room. You can understand that the spectrum of autism is extremely vast, and you're going to have these kids at different, I mean, we are all on this autism spectrum, and they're going to be at different levels, right? So you can either have people who are brilliant but are only brilliant in the sense of like analyzing or maths, or an educational perspective, and they may not be able to like interact in a social sense. They may not be able to do sports because they may not be able to comprehend, right? Teamwork, skills that are like, life skills that you need, but they may be, brilliant geniuses, right? Or you may have kids who are slightly slower at understanding, slower at learning, that need things to go at their own pace, that they take time to understand and they take time to digest things that are given to them. So you have these two types of, so we're going to be dealing with these two types of cases throughout the debate. Now, moving on to my arguments. First, let's take prop. So I will have 2 points under prop. Firstly, the first argument being the specialized support and expertise that these schools will give, right? Understand that we now live in the 21st century, where education has become such a big a need, such a big demand for different types of education, because the world is learning that not everyone understands, and you can't cater to one person the same way that you cater to like 100 people in terms of education, right? So it is much more specialized now. There are people that are more highly trained. We are training people to understand children, to understand kids from a young age, because kids come from different backgrounds, they come from different families, and they are brought up in different ways. So to manage them, to understand them, there is a lot of training and expertise, and it is a, a job set and a skill set that is in high demand, right? So understand that there are people trained. They are catering to the needs of specialized kids, kids with special needs, and kids who are mildly autistic, right? Understand that for a child with mild autism, you are now able to learn, you are now able to absorb knowledge and learn new things without the pressure of having to keep up with someone who is what we would call an average student, right? We as average students, fight every day to keep up with our workload, our uni load, our school load. It is a constant fight, it is a constant battle, right? And we itself struggle. Even at school, anyone would struggle, right? Facing examinations, facing, tests, whatever it may be, we struggle. Understand that for a mildly autistic person, they are having not one but two struggles. One, they are struggling with overcoming the problems they have within themselves, whether it is them being too slow or them being too advanced to even understand the simpler things, right? So they are having the struggle of the fight that they are battling within themselves, plus the fight that they are having to keep up with their peers, keep up with the rest of their batch in school, keeping up with examinations, that pressure. Understand that in a disabled school, you are able to take your own time. You are able to do things at your own pace. That pressure is essentially removed off of them. This, I would say, is a great opportunity for any student, because as much as we need pressure to, push us, to motivate us, it may not always be, and studies have shown that it is not always the best thing. We have seen more harm than good with pressure involved, right? From like, suicide attempts to people, overdosing themselves because they can't keep up with the pressure and the expectations that are set for them. So imagine that pressure, but set on someone who is already struggling within themselves, right? So in an environment where there is specialized support and expertise to help them ground themselves in a way that they are able to maximize their potential, in a way that they are able to have a full education and not a half kind of half education where they are not essentially fully understanding what essentially is going on, right? And now moving on to my second argument, which is the social skills that come along with being in a disabled school. Understand that social skills is a major it's a skill that you learn and that you need for the rest of your life, whether it comes to your job interviews, whether it comes to raising a family, to having a relationship with anyone, just having friends, having peers, being able to network yourself, and being able to talk to other people, just living a normal life. You need to have social skills. Let's say this person, a mildly autistic person, was sent to a normal local government school in Sri Lanka, right? Understand that this person is going to isolate themselves. They're not going to feel comfortable. They're either going to be bullied in school because they are seen as different, or they are just, which will essentially lead them to isolating themselves, sticking to their corner, and never conversing with people. Meaning that they are going to struggle later on. They are going to struggle because they won't know how to express themselves. They won't know how to know what they're feeling. Teachers may know that there is something wrong with them, that they are moderately autistic, that they have certain conditions. But then again, you're talking about one teacher who has to deal with the workload of 50 students in a class, right? So obviously, they're not going to get the attention that they need. Even though teachers may be trained, practically, it is almost impossible. So you are talking with this person isolating themselves because of the environment that they're in, and not being able to not being able to put out their social skills, express themselves, to learn how to speak, how to converse, how to have good communication. They're not going to be able to do that. Versus you send them to a disabled school that caters to allowing yourself to express yourself, to where they learn how to converse, how to have a normal conversation, just to know how to go and pick up groceries, to talk to a person you randomly meet on the street, which are essential life skills that people need to survive. So based on these two prop arguments, we believe that we show you just how important it is that the child is put in an environment that essentially allows them and gives them the space that they need. Moving on to my op arguments, the first would be the loss of potential. Understand that sending these children to a disabled school is setting these kids back up to like many years of their life, right? Now, remember, I said that these kids obviously fall on a spectrum of autism, right? Most of them, in most scenarios that I have seen, examples that I have seen in my, like, in real life, are kids who are essentially what we would call geniuses, right? They are above average. They can process information, they can process knowledge, up to like 10 times the speed that any normal person can. They see things from a different view. Their analytical mind is essentially, it's capable of so much more than a normal person. But and yes, I agree. I accept the fact that this could be one child out of like 10 mildly autistic kids. But still, even for that one child, you are holding them back from their full potential. You are they are losing opportunities from being equal to other people. Disabled schools aren't going to have the same competitions, the same opportunities, the same industry events, or school events and peers that a normal school will have. And understand that for this child to fully like enhance their potential and to fully like make best use of their potential, you have to put them in the same environment that you're putting all other people that they are equal to. We spoke about pressure in terms of proposition and how that was a bad thing, but we flip that argument and we talk about how pressure is actually a good thing. It forces you and me to work harder. So understand that for a mildly autistic, why are we treating a mildly autistic person any different when they could actually be 10 times better than we are at certain things, right? You're taking away the chance of this person leading a normal life. Let's say a mildly autistic person went to school, went to a normal school, their parents treated them the same, their friends treated them the same, teachers treated them the same. They may not even realize that they were mildly autistic to begin with, because they don't feel different, they're not treated differently, and they are essentially put in an environment of normalcy. And as a child, that feeling of inclusion, that feeling of like not being isolated, would essentially mean the world, right? Because as a child, all you want to do is make friends, all you want to do is fit in. So you're essentially allowing that person to live their life to the closest you can to what a normal life would look like. And that is what we as side opposition want, because at the end of the day, we want them to live a normal life. So that would start by treating them as a normal person. That moves on to my second point for opposition, which is essentially the segregation that it creates, right? So again, what I said about disabled schools, and we use the same argument that we use for proposition, which was how you don't learn social skills. You learn social skills in disabled schools. We flip that around and we talk about how accurate that actually is. You're saying that you're segregating this person, taking them to a whole nother planet. They don't even know what a normal school looks like. They don't know what normal friends looks like, because they're surrounded by people who are vastly different from them, who have different issues. There is no person that they can relate to, in terms of, because everyone will be on this spectrum, right? So you're essentially segregating them and you're saying, no, you are different to the rest of all the kids, right? The rest of the 100 kids who will be that same age. And because of this, you are, yes, in school, they may feel included in a disabled school. But what happens into society? In society, you're not segregated. You're not being put into a different batch of people saying, no, you guys are disabled. That doesn't happen. In society, everyone's equal. A job opportunity stands for anyone and everyone who wants it. So you're essentially creating this segregation that they don't know how to survive. They don't know how to react. They don't know how to act within a normal society. And this causes many problems. Like in a social aspect, it causes problems. It causes this kind of the differences that you kind of constantly keep attacking. These become more pronounced, and then you're essentially enhancing the fact that they're different. And this can be detrimental to them, because they may have a good childhood, but what about their adulthood? What about the rest of their lives, right? And so on and so forth. So now moving on to my last point, which is essentially my clash point, right? You're talking, so on proposition side, it's the benefit of specialized support. That's your biggest benefit that you're getting out of proposition, versus the cost of segregation. At what cost are you getting that specialized support? Yes, the child may have an amazing education, they may be able to process knowledge, they may be able to learn, but at what cost? Your cost is segregation. Yes, they have learned, yes, they have come this far, but after that point, after they don't have trained teachers anymore, after they are put into society, after the age of 18, what happens then? Yeah, what cost, that cost that they, essentially you'd have to pay that cost at that point, because then they are segregated from society. They don't know how to react, they are considered different. If anyone asks them, where did you go to school, what kind of, then it comes about saying, oh yeah, I'm disabled, and you are essentially segregating yourself as this child who has grown up, right? So that is the kind of cost that we will have to pay. And basically that is what this entire debate would essentially hinge on, taking into consideration all stakeholders, mainly being the moderately autistic child themselves, the quality of education of the disabled schools, the level of education of the trained teachers at these disabled schools, and then the parents of these children, and what kind of impact it would have on them, on their family life. And essentially that would be the end of the debate. Thank you.